Good afternoon, everyone. Council General, Chair, Senators, I believe. Yep. It is a great pleasure to be asked to say a few words about my personal experiences during the Korea War. I'll just start off from the beginning. My name is Romeo Daley. I'm a Canadian Korea War veteran. I served 2 tours in Korea from 1951-1952 with the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. Korea became known as the Forgotten War, mainly because it came 5 years after the end of the Second World War and was not given the same coverage by the media as it was considered a police action and not a war. There is no doubt by anyone who was there during the Korea War that it was a war and not a forgotten one. On June the 25th, 1950, Canada's young men and women were called upon and volunteered to go to the land of the morning calm, Korea. The Canadians fought in many major battles, including Gapyeong, Shaili, Semichon Valley, The Hook, Hills 187, 227, 166, 113, 159, 355. And at one time, I think I was on them all. 26,791 served on land, air, and sea during the war, and with an additional 7,000 who served as peacekeepers from July 28, 1953 until the end of December 1955. 516 did not return, and 1,558 were wounded. Korea was backed by China, who aided the North Koreans with both material and troops and became the #1 adversary in the field for the Canadian troops during the war. I'll make a little note that all the involvements that Canada was in the Second World War on the ground was all against the Chinese and not the North Koreans. I was one of the 26,799 proud Canadians who volunteered to go to Korea during the war. I was amazed at the poor condition of the Koreans at that time. They had absolutely nothing. It was a primitive country with thatched roof houses, dirt floors. When we were proceeding north in Korea, there was long lines of refugees coming from the north. Men, women, and particularly the children, some with no clothing, most with no food. It didn't seem like they had anything, and anything that we could do to improve to them, it was very sickening. That's the worst part of the wars. It is the children that suffer, and the women. There were atrocities that I personally saw and still affect me. I still have thoughts, dreams, and sometimes wake up a couple of times at night and wonder where I am. But it was tough to see them, and being Canadians, and the way we are, we tried to help them as much as we could and gave them as much food, clothing, and some medical supplies, basic things such as bandages, painkillers, anything that we could spare and give to them. When we first went to Korea, we were not put in the front lines right away. Brigadier Rockingham wanted a little more training, so we did hill training, and when doing that, we came across a lot of dead Koreans and Chinese, as well as children and women. In the winter of 1951, we came across 42 young American Marines in their sleeping bags that were bayoneted. They were so exhausted from clearing their positions that they just crawled into their sleeping bags and went to sleep without posting the guards. The Chinese killed them all right there. That was pretty tough to see. Brigadier Rockingham said that the Canadians would not have sleeping bags. They took away our greatcoats, even took the hoods off our parkas so we could hear. The winters in Korea were very cold, similar to northern Canada. We slept in trenches, and in the winter months, Rats would come into the trenches looking for warmth and share our food, of course. And the rats were very, very large. There was monsoon season with lots of rain, and it was impossible to keep dry. The summer brought very hot days when some of them came snakes to share the trenches with. The snakes were small but very plentiful, so life in the trenches could be quite challenging. The Battle of Cap Young is one of Canada's greatest yet known military achievements. For 2 days, April 23rd to April 25th, 1951, a battalion of roughly 700 Canadians with the 2nd Battalion of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry helped defend the crucial hill in the front lines of the Korea War against the forces of about 5,000 Chinese soldiers. Besieged by waves of attackers, the Canadians held their position amid the horror of close combat until the assaulting force had been halted and the Canadians could be relieved. That was the first time in the Korea War, I don't know about the Second World War, that we called artillery fire and bomb fire right on top of our positions. When the battle was over, there was not one Canadian soldier injured by our own fire. The battalion suffered amazingly low casualties for that night, 10 dead and 23 wounded. The determined stand contributed significantly to the defeat of the communist offensives in South Korea that year. The 2nd Battalion of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry stopped the Chinese from advancing any further into South Korea. The actions of the 2nd Battalion of the PPCLI and the actions of the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Australian Regiment, as well as Able Company of the 72nd United States Heavy Tank Battalion under UN command, were each awarded the United States Presidential Citation for their actions in those 2 days. The Valley of Cap Young is much the way it was a half a century ago. The ridges once known as Hill 677 are dense with pine trees that were supplied by Canada. I did serve with the 2nd Battalion of the Princess Patricia's Canadian Light Infantry. I was at Cap Young, but I was not there during the battle. I went as reinforcements after the battle. The Battle of Cap Young was only one of many battles fought valiantly by many regiments during the Korea War. The battle stopped on July 27, 1953, when an armistice was signed. Although the shooting war was over at that time, South and North Korea are still technically at war, and the 38th parallel became the heavily guarded line between North and South. And just a little comment, my good wife and I were there in 2014, and in that demarcated zone, there are still 4.5 million live landmines there that neither the South nor the North will win and take out. I feel that most wars are unnecessary. They are caused by either religion, politics, or economics, and unfortunately, it is the civilians that suffer. If the politicians or religious people were to settle this, we wouldn't have wars. I personally think that the differences of ideas can be resolved without war. It's a crying to shame to see the young people that are killed, that are maimed, that are scarred, a lot, and I put myself in this category, are scarred and wounded inside and out, and it's hard to come out. I was wounded during the war when a hand grenade exploded in front of me, wounding my right eye and ear, and was treated at the same American MASH hospital, Unit 4077 in Weijang, Korea, and that is the MASH unit that you see on TV today. It is documented in the United States that I was one of the first Canadians to be treated there. The doctors did a wonderful job. During the war, I lost some very close comrades. Most were young and didn't have a chance. Every year we go to Meadowville Cemetery in Brampton, Ontario to the wall of remembrance. There are 6 of my buddies that were very close to me, and I make a point of putting a poppy on them each year. I think of them and miss them, but for the grace of God, I could be there. If I talk to men and women who did not come back, if I could talk to men and women who did not come back, I would say, rest in peace, my friends. It was not in vain. You did an excellent job. My wife and I, Beth, were honored to have been able to go to Korea and revisit in April of 2012 and saw firsthand the strong, modern, industrial country that Korea has become. It is not surprising at all when we look at the success of the Koreans in Canada. On the Veterans Revisit, we visited many of the battle sites in the hills where Canadians took part. We also paid respect to the UN cemetery in Busan and many of the 516 Canadians who made the ultimate sacrifice, and to lay a wreath at the Kapyong Memorial. While in Korea, we were treated with dignity, respect, and warmth that is the trademark of the Korean people, and we cannot thank them enough for the wonderful memories that will remain in our hearts. Every war veteran has their own experiences to tell and share. I would encourage everyone to study your history. My good friend, Daniel Rodriguez, who is with us here tonight, produced a wonderful historical series entitled The Veterans, a documentary series in which many veterans from World War II, Korea, peacekeeping, Bosnia, Somalia, Rwanda, Afghanistan, and many other peacekeeping missions spoke about their experiences serving in the Navy, Army, Air Force, and Merchant Navy. In this series, myself, my good friend Pablo Long, who is also with us here tonight. The series is on the internet for viewing. For those who wish to learn more about the Canadian involvement in the wars and in peacekeeping, you can enter the series by Googling vimo.com/channels/the-veterans, then scroll through to the selected video. Hopefully everyone will take the time to watch all of these videos, as this is Canada's military history told firsthand. That in my comments, I did not mention the Air Force or the Navy, because I had nothing to do with it. I'm not belittling them, I'm not slighting them. They all did a wonderful job. We all had work to do, and it's nice to be back. I thank you very much for the opportunity to share my thoughts.